Yo, what is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. It is Professor Anime, and welcome back to yet again another Boruto Naruto Next Generations episode review. Today we will be discussing episode 54 of Boruto. So, without further ado, let's begin. So before we actually begin this review of Boruto, I got some important news to discuss with all of you regarding the Boruto anime. Apparently the Boruto anime is actually going to be moved to Thursdays now. Instead of coming out on Wednesdays, it will be coming out on Thursdays. Right here we have an article that states, recently Weekly Shonen Jump confirmed Boruto Naruto Next Generations is moving to a new time slot. Currently the show airs on Wednesday at 5:55 p.m. JST. The anime is moving to Thursdays at 7:25 p.m. JST, giving a premiere slot. The show will continue with its current time slot for 2 weeks before its 56th episode airs on Thursdays. So basically 7:25 p.m. basically estimates to 6:25 a.m. on Thursdays, so we will now be expecting Boruto to come around that time. So yeah, I just wanted to clarify with everyone that Boruto is in fact going to be having a different time slot, and it's going to be airing on a different day. So if you're expecting Boruto to possibly come out on Wednesdays from now on, well, here you go. It's coming out on Thursdays now. So in my personal opinion, I believe that this episode of Boruto was probably one of the strongest episodes of Boruto that we have had for quite some time. Especially that fight with Sasuke and Kinshiki Ōtsutsuki. That was just done amazingly. I really did enjoy that fight scene. Now, it was a short fight scene, but even in the movie, Boruto, the movie, we actually had that same fight scene play out between Sasuke and Kinshiki, and it was honestly just as short as we saw in this episode. And I believe the animation was actually slightly different. I don't think they animated everything to a T from the movie, or, you know, just copy and pasted. I think they actually did have a little bit of different scenes within this episode of Boruto when it came down to the whole fight. But, you know, they went all in on the fight. Honestly, good job on you, Studio Period, because how you animated that fight scene was the coolest shit that I've seen from the series in a while. But after the scene with Sasuke versus Kinshiki, you know, we later find out that Kinshiki is not the only Otsutsuki there. It is also the other Otsutsuki that we have seen in the previous episodes of Boruto, who is essentially the ringleader of everything, you know, regarding the Otsutsuki's return. However, Sasuke was able to eventually, you know, leave the place unharmed and alive, somehow, and he ends up going back to the Hidden Leaf village where Naruto is at, giving him the heads up that, hey, it seems as though the Otsutskis are making a comeback, so just be prepared. Shikamaru even deducts that there is a possible war that is going to break out with the Otsutskis finally returning. This could be a declaration of war or something like that. Naruto, on the other hand, says that no matter if that is the case, we cannot allow something like that to happen. So they're kind of still investigating this whole Otsutsuki's return and the ruins that they have seen in various locations throughout. So when it comes down to what their overall goals and motivations are, as of right now, we still don't really know. Now, this episode of Boruto was titled Sasuke and Boruto, which is essentially what we got throughout the majority of this episode, as it was mainly focusing on that factor. Sure, there were other things sprinkled throughout the episode, but it was mainly focusing on the dynamic between Sasuke and Boruto. As we saw in the conclusion of last week's episode, Boruto wanted to take this chance, now that Sasuke has returned to the village, to ask him if he can actually teach him things, and if Boruto can be his student, and that is exactly what happens in this episode. We see that Boruto, you know, is trying to impress Sasuke, and really looks up to this guy, and says that, you used to be my father's rival back in the day. You are a strong ninja like my father. Why don't you become my master and teach me things? I want to be strong just like you. And that is exactly what we see in this episode of Boruto. But Sasuke states to Boruto that the only way in which he will teach Boruto is if he masters the Rasengan, or at least learns how to use it. Not particularly master, because as it was clarified in this episode of Boruto, it took 3 years for Naruto to learn to use the Rasengan, and half of a year in order to master it fully. So upon hearing this from Sasuke, Boruto draws to the conclusion that, well, if I'm to master the Rasengan, I'm not going to ask my father because, one, it seems like he's busy with work and has no time for me, and honestly, I have a grudge against my father, so I'm not going to ask him. He goes straight to the next person who was, you know, passed down with that jutsu. Naruto eventually taught who? Boruto's current sensei, Konohamaru. So we see Konohamaru teaching Boruto the Rasengan, and throughout this kind of like montage of clips, you see that, you know, Boruto is just having a hard time getting used to the Rasengan as it is. And the thing about Boruto is that he's a very impatient child, very impatient, because honestly, from what we have seen throughout this entire series of Boruto, with this obsession with power and just wanting to be acknowledged by people, he wants everything to be quick. He wants everything to be quick. Now, Boruto is a fast learner, mind you, because he did, in fact, learn the Rasengan within a couple of days with what we saw from this episode of Boruto. But the thing is that just on Boruto's personality alone, he just does not have patience for anything whatsoever. And while Boruto did in fact learn how to use the Rasengan within this episode, it was very, very minuscule as to, you know, how its shape was formed, and it wasn't like a full-fledged big Rasengan that you usually see Naruto use, or even Konohamaru for that matter. So Boruto, knowing him how he is, and his personality alone, on how he wants things super duper quick, he basically went the easy way and went to Katasuke, who eventually gave him the gadget that was able to basically manipulate his creation of jutsu to the point into which he was able to use a jutsu into which he can create literally a bigger shape of the Rasengan, excuse me. But yes, the gadget that Katasuke gave Boruto is essentially a gadget in which it can literally spit out any sort of jutsu from its user, just with a tiny little scroll involved. And that is what we saw in this episode of Boruto, and Sasuke was even impressed by this as well, because the first day that Boruto went to Sasuke, he showed him the Rasengan, and it was very minuscule. So in order to progress and get some extra help a little bit faster, with the help of science, Boruto went to Katasuke. So, when it comes to Boruto's overall ability to use the Rasengan, he is a fast learner, and he is able to use it to a certain degree, but it's not at its fullest potential at the moment, and also, it's still really not at its fullest potential at the moment because of the help of, you know, the gadget that he was given by Katasuke. And if I haven't already mentioned before, the gadget, and as well as Katasuke, is going to play a major role in the Chunin Exam arc of Boruto, because as what we saw in the last, like, what, 2 to 3 episodes of Boruto, we saw that when Katasuke just got back from visiting Naruto, the current Hokage, and was turned down of his proposal to actually, you know, use the gadgets within the Chunin Exams, he goes back to his lab, and eventually someone comes up from behind him and grabs him. And the scene just kind of cut to that. Now, Katasuke seems very normal within this episode of Boruto, and there doesn't seem to be a whole lot wrong with him. But he does give, like, some sort of evil grin, or a different vibe than usual. So, it seems as though there is a possibility that something happened to Katasuke, and how he's turned to be a little bit more manipulative towards Boruto. He just seems rather off, so it's good to probably keep an eye on this individual right here. But yeah, other than that, that is pretty much going to do it for this week's episode of Boruto. It seems as though Boruto is going to learn from Sasuke, and also the series of Boruto is actually getting quite interesting now, with the Ōtsutsuki finally coming into action. That fight scene in this episode of Boruto in the very beginning was awesome. I hope many of the fights within this arc will be just as good as that, because that was freaking good. And the Chunin Exams are you know, going to begin very, very, very soon, so that is going to be awesome to see as well. I can't wait to see what new content Masashi Kishimoto is going to add in for this arc of Boruto, which we didn't get to see in the original movie. So I'm excited for that. Let me know what you guys thought about this episode of Boruto. Do you think this episode was good? Did you think it was bad? I personally really enjoyed it because, honestly, I thought that this was personally one of the strongest episodes of Boruto that we have had in quite some time within this series. But let me know what you guys thought about it in the comments down below. Be sure to give this video a like if you enjoyed it. Hit that red subscribe button down below if you want to see more. And with that said, I'll see you all in the next one.